They took my $180,000 tractor in broad daylight and smiled when I asked for it back. I walked out that morning expecting the same quiet I'd known for 20 years, but my $180,000 tractor was gone. No broken lock, no forced entry, just clean tracks leading straight toward the HOA. When I asked for it back, they smiled and told me they had the authority. That's when I stopped talking and started building something they didn't see coming. Stick with me, because this doesn't end the way they thought it would. And if you respect standing your ground the right way, go ahead and subscribe. Nothing on Cole Harper's ranch ever moved without him knowing. That wasn't pride talking. That was 20 years of routine, of walking the same fence lines, checking the same gates, listening to the same engines. Out here, small changes stood out the way a fresh cut stood out on old wood. That morning started like every other. Cole stepped out onto the porch just after sunrise, coffee still hot in his hand, boots already dusty from the day before. The air carried that dry Montana stillness, quiet enough that you could hear a hinge creak half a mile off if something didn't belong. He paused halfway down the steps. Something didn't belong. The equipment shed sat open, not wide, just enough to be wrong. Cole didn't rush. He never rushed. He walked down the gravel path, each step slow, steady, eyes tracking everything the way they did on patrol. The padlock still hung from the latch, snapped shut like nothing had been touched. But the door was ajar. He reached it and pushed it open with 2 fingers. Empty. The space where the tractor should have been looked bigger than it ever had before. A clean rectangle in the dust, darker where the weight had settled for years. The outline of something that had always been there, and now wasn't. Cole stood still for a long moment. Then he stepped inside. No broken boards, no forced entry, no scattered tools. Whoever had done this hadn't rushed, hadn't panicked. They'd taken their time. That told him more than anything else. He crouched, running his hand lightly over the dirt floor. Tire marks, fresh, deep, pulled straight out. No hesitation, no spinning, no correction. Clean work, too clean for a mistake. Cole stood and walked back outside, following the tracks as they curved across the yard. The morning sun hit them just right, casting shadows into the grooves. A trailer had come through here, heavy enough to leave an impression even on hard ground. It hadn't come through the gate. Cole turned his head. The ranch gate stood exactly where it always did. Closed, chained, locked. No damage, no sign it had been opened. He walked over anyway, checking the chain with his hand. Still tight. Still set the way he'd left it the night before. Whoever took the tractor didn't use the gate. They went around. Cole followed the trail along the fence line, boots crunching over dry dirt and loose gravel. The tracks dipped where the ground softened near the creek, then climbed back up toward the eastern boundary, toward the subdivision. He stopped at the fence. On the other side, the HOA houses stretched in neat rows, all the same shade of beige, all facing the same direction like they'd been placed there instead of built. Fresh lawns, clean driveways, mailboxes lined up like they were waiting for inspection. Nothing moved. Not a car. Not a person. But Cole could feel it anyway. That quiet kind of awareness you only noticed when it was aimed at you. Someone over there knew exactly what had happened. He rested his hand on the top rail of the fence, eyes narrowing slightly as he followed the tracks where they flattened near the edge, where a trailer would have lined up just right to load something heavy. His tractor, $180,000 of steel, diesel, and memory. His father had bought it the year before he passed. Said it was the last machine he'd ever need. Said if you took care of it, it would outlast both of them. Cole had believed him. He glanced back toward the empty shed, then back toward the houses. No broken locks. No forced entry. No attempt to hide the tracks. This wasn't theft the way most people thought about it. This was something else. Deliberate. Confident. Like whoever took it didn't think they were stealing at all. Cole took one last look at the fence line, then turned and walked back toward the house. His pace hadn't changed. His breathing hadn't changed. From a distance, nothing about him would have looked different, but his mind was already moving. He reached his truck and leaned in through the open door, grabbing his phone from the console. No calls, no messages, no explanation waiting for him. Of course not. He didn't dial anyone. Not yet. Instead, he turned and looked back across the ranch one more time, tracing the path in his head. Shed, yard, fence, subdivision. There weren't many people in this county who could move something that big without being noticed. Fewer still who would do it in daylight hours and leave the gate untouched. And only one group of people who'd spent the last 2 years acting like his land was already theirs. Cole slipped the phone into his pocket. His coffee sat forgotten on the porch rail, steam fading into the morning air. Across the fence, one of the front doors opened just slightly, then closed again. Not enough to see who, just enough to confirm what he already knew. This wasn't random. He exhaled slowly, steady, controlled. Then he started toward the house, already planning his next move. Because whoever had taken that tractor had done it believing one thing, that nothing was going to happen to them. Cole reached the porch, paused, and looked back one last time at the quiet line of houses beyond his fence. His expression didn't change, but the thought settled in, clear and certain. They were about to find out exactly how wrong they were. Cole didn't call the sheriff. Not yet. Instead, he got in his truck, turned the key, and let the engine idle for a few seconds longer than usual. His eyes stayed on the fence line ahead, where the tire tracks disappeared into the HOA side like a road that didn't officially exist. If this was what he thought it was, there was one place to start. The HOA office sat at the center of the subdivision, a small building with clean siding, a trimmed lawn, and a flag that looked newer than anything on Cole's side of the fence. Everything about it was maintained to a standard that didn't happen by accident. Control lived there. Cole pulled into the gravel lot without rushing. A few cars were already parked out front. Residents, maybe a committee meeting, maybe nothing at all. Around here, people showed up when something felt worth watching. He stepped out, shut the truck door, and walked toward the entrance. Inside, the air smelled faintly of polish and paper. A bulletin board lined one wall, covered in notices, rules about lawn height, fence materials, acceptable paint colors, a list of standards that had never once applied to his land, no matter how often they tried to pretend otherwise. Diane Whitaker sat behind a desk near the back, glasses low on her nose, a folder open in front of her like she'd been expecting to be interrupted. She looked up before he said a word. There it was, that expression. Not surprise. Recognition. Well, Diane said, closing the folder with a quiet tap. Mr. Harper. Cole stopped a few feet from the desk. He didn't sit, didn't lean. Just stood there. Steady. Morning, he said. Her smile came easily. Practiced. What can I help you with? Cole let a second pass, then another. My tractor's missing, he said. Came out this morning. Shed's empty. Diane didn't blink. Is that right? She said. Tone light, almost curious. Cole watched her closely. Tracks lead to your side of the fence. That got her a slight tilt of the head, like she was considering something she already knew the answer to. Well, she said slowly, that would make sense. Cole didn't move. Would it? She folded her hands on the desk. There was an issue brought to our attention regarding that equipment, blocking access near the shared boundary. Our maintenance team handled it. Behind her, a door creaked softly. Tyler Whitaker leaned against the frame, arms crossed, a grin already forming like he'd been waiting for the moment. Cole didn't look at him yet. Handled it how? Cole asked. Diane's smile sharpened just a fraction. Relocated, temporarily, to avoid further obstruction. Cole let the word sit in the air. Relocated, he repeated. That's correct. Without telling me. Diane gave a small shrug. Notifications have been sent in the past regarding compliance issues. At a certain point, action becomes necessary. Now Cole glanced toward Tyler. The grin widened, like he couldn't quite help himself. Cole looked back at Diane. You got something in writing that says you can take equipment off private property? The room shifted. Not loudly. Just enough. A couple of people near the front desk turned slightly, their attention pulling toward the conversation. Someone stopped flipping through papers. Another leaned just a little closer to hear. Diane noticed it too. Her posture straightened. This isn't about taking anything, she said smoothly. It's about maintaining community standards and access for residents. Cole nodded once. Then show me the bylaw. That pause came fast, small, but real. Diane reached for a stack of papers on her desk, flipping through them without looking down long enough to actually read anything. It wasn't searching. It was stalling. Mr. Harper, she said, you've had multiple notices regarding your property. The shed placement, the machinery. I asked for the bylaw, Cole said, voice still even. Tyler let out a short laugh from the doorway. Man, you really don't get it, do you? He said. This isn't your little patch of dirt out here anymore. Things changed. Cole turned his head slightly, just enough to look at him. Nothing in his expression moved. Did they? Cole said. Tyler pushed off the doorframe, stepping forward a pace, confidence rolling off him like he'd rehearsed this in his head. Yeah, he said. They did. People live here now. Rules matter. Cole held his gaze for a second, then looked back at Diane. You got the paperwork, he said. Or not. Diane set the stack down. Her smile returned, thinner now. We'll provide documentation if necessary, she said, but I don't think escalating this is in anyone's best interest. There it was. Not a yes, not a no. Cole let the silence stretch just long enough for the people in the room to feel it. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, turned it so Diane could see. A still image. Grainy but clear enough. A flatbed trailer at the edge of the ranch, headlights off. A figure in the cab of the tractor. Tyler. Diane's eyes flicked to it, then away. That doesn't prove anything, she said immediately. A blurry farm camera. It's time-stamped, Cole said. Matches the tracks. Tyler shifted slightly behind her. Just a half step. But Cole saw it. Diane didn't turn around. Even if that were relevant, she said, voice tightening, the association has the authority to manage obstructions affecting community access. Show me where, Cole said again. This time the silence landed harder. No papers moved. No one spoke. The people in the room weren't pretending not to listen anymore. Diane's smile faded. Just a little. Then she leaned back in her chair, crossing one leg over the other. You're overreacting, she said. This kind of attitude is exactly why we've had to implement stricter oversight. Some residents simply refuse to adapt. Cole slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Where is it?" he asked. Diane held his gaze. "Safe," she said, "and it'll be returned when this situation is properly addressed." "Meaning what?" "Meaning," she said, voice lifting just enough for the room to hear, "when you start following the same rules as everyone else." There it was. Not about access, not about obstruction. Control. Cole nodded once. Slow, measured. "All right," he said. He turned toward the door. Behind him, Tyler let out another short laugh. "Yeah," he said. "Go ahead. Do whatever you think you're gonna do." Cole didn't stop, didn't turn back. He reached the door, pushed it open, and stepped out into the sunlight. The gravel lot was quiet. Too quiet. He walked back to his truck, each step steady, the weight of the conversation settling into something solid in his chest. They hadn't denied it. Not really, they'd just decided it didn't matter. Cole opened the truck door and paused, one hand resting on the frame. Behind him, the HOA building stood still and polished, like nothing inside it had shifted at all. But something had. Because now he knew exactly what he was dealing with. Not a misunderstanding. Not a mistake. A decision. Made by people who believed the rules only applied one way. Cole got in, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot without looking back. As the subdivision disappeared behind him, one thought stayed locked in place. If they didn't have the authority, why were they so sure they couldn't be touched? Cole let the truck roll to a stop just inside his gate and killed the engine. The silence came back fast, filling the space like it always did out here. No voices, no polished floors, no one pretending rules existed where they didn't. Just land. His land. He sat there for a moment, hands resting on the wheel, replaying the conversation. Not the words, but the confidence behind them. Diane hadn't needed proof. Tyler hadn't needed permission. They both acted like the outcome had already been decided long before the tractor ever moved. That wasn't new. It had just finally crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. Cole stepped out and shut the door, eyes drifting back toward the fence line. 2 years ago, none of this had mattered. The subdivision didn't exist. The eastern edge of his property had been nothing but open ground and wind moving through grass. Then the survey stakes showed up. Bright orange flags hammered into dirt that had belonged to his family since before the county had a name people recognized. A developer bought everything beyond his boundary and carved it into identical lots, each one boxed in by regulations that multiplied faster than the houses themselves. That's when Diane Whitaker arrived. Cole hadn't known her name at first. Just a woman walking the line one afternoon with a clipboard, measuring distances that didn't concern her. She introduced herself like she was doing him a favor. "Diane Whitaker," she'd said. HOA president. Back then, Cole had just nodded. "Cole Harper," he'd replied. "Owner." That should have been enough. It wasn't. The first letter showed up 2 weeks later. A formal notice about vegetation encroachment along the shared boundary. Grass too high. Brush unmanaged. Language that made it sound like he was violating something that had never applied to him. Cole read it once, folded it, and set it aside. The second one came a week later. Then another. Fence height. Shed placement. Equipment visibility. Each letter carried more certainty than the last. Like if they said it enough times, it would become true. Cole responded the same way every time. Calm, direct, documented. He sent copies of his deed, survey maps, property lines stamped and recorded decades before the HOA existed. Facts. Diane didn't argue the facts. She ignored them. Instead, she escalated. Fines started appearing in the letters, suggested at first, then stated outright. Amounts that meant nothing to him, but the principle behind them did. The assumption that he would eventually bend just to avoid the nuisance. He didn't. That's when she started showing up in person. Always at the fence line. Always with the same posture. Arms crossed, sunglasses pushed up, voice just loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "You can't just do whatever you want out here," she told him once, tapping her clipboard like it carried authority. "This area's changed." Cole had leaned against the fence, listening. "Not on this side," he said. She smiled like she'd been waiting for that answer. "Everything around you has," she replied. "You don't stay untouched forever." He didn't argue, didn't raise his voice, just stood there until she ran out of things to say. That silence bothered her more than anything, because silence couldn't be fined, couldn't be written up, couldn't be controlled. Over time, the complaints got smaller. Petty. The sound of his tractor starting before 8 in the morning, the color of his fence posts, the position of a tool rack inside a shed she had no right to see into, each one less about rules, more about pressure. Cole adjusted what made sense, trimmed where it didn't cost him anything. But anything outside her authority, he left exactly as it was. That's when the tone changed. One afternoon she caught him near the gate, waiting like she knew exactly when he'd pass through. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she said. Cole stopped, resting his hand on the chain. "Doesn't feel hard," he replied. Her smile tightened. "You think you can just ignore this long enough and it goes away?" Cole looked at her for a second, then back at the land behind him. "It already has," he said. That was the moment something shifted. Not in him, in her. From then on, it wasn't about compliance. It was about removal. He saw it in the way she talked about the land, like it was an obstacle instead of something that existed on its own terms. Like his ranch was a gap in a picture she was trying to complete. And Tyler watched all of it. Cole had seen him more often over the past year, standing just inside the HOA side of the fence, leaning against posts like he belonged there more than anyone else. Always with that same look, half curiosity, half something else, something closer to hunger. He didn't work, that was obvious. No routines, no patterns, just time, and too much of it. The kind of time that let ideas settle in without anything to push back against them. Cole had caught him staring at the tractor more than once. Long enough to notice. Long enough to understand. Back at the shed, Cole walked inside again, standing in the empty space where the machine had been. His boots scuffed the edge of the dark outline on the floor, breaking the shape just slightly. They hadn't just taken equipment. They'd taken something they thought they could replace. Or worse, something they thought they could claim. Cole turned, stepping back into the light, eyes tracking once more toward the subdivision. 2 years of letters. 2 years of pressure. 2 years of being told, in 100 different ways, that what was his wouldn't stay that way forever. And now, they'd acted on it. Not quietly, not carefully, but with the kind of confidence that only came from believing no one would stop them. Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone again, scrolling through the camera feeds from the night before. Timestamps, angles, movement across the edge of the property. There was enough here. More than enough. But he hadn't used it yet. Hadn't even mentioned all of it in the office. Because what he needed now wasn't reaction. It was proof that couldn't be ignored. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, turning toward the house. Behind him, the fence line stretched long and straight, dividing 2 sides that had never been equal, no matter how much one side pretended they were. Cole stepped onto the porch, paused, and looked out over the ranch, then toward the houses beyond it. Something had changed. Not the land, not the lines. Just the point where patience stopped being enough on its own. And as that thought settled in, steady and unavoidable, one question stayed with him. What changed that made them finally cross the line? Cole didn't have to guess. He already had the answer. He just needed to confirm it. He walked back inside, straight past the kitchen, into the small office his father had built years ago. The desk was still the same. Solid wood, worn smooth at the edges, drawers organized with a kind of discipline that never needed labels. Cole pulled open the bottom drawer and took out a black case. Inside were the keys to everything that had happened 2 nights ago. He set the case on the desk, opened it, and powered up the small monitor connected to the ranch's camera system. Not the ones mounted in plain sight near the house or the main gate. Those were for visibility, for deterrence. The real ones sat farther out. Tree line, fence corners, blind spots most people never noticed. Cole leaned forward, fingers steady as he scrolled back through the footage. Timestamps flickered past in quiet increments. Hours of nothing. Wind moving across the field. Fence posts standing still. A stray coyote cutting across the far edge of the property. Then, movement. He slowed the playback. 11:42 p.m. A faint glow appeared at the far edge of the eastern boundary. Not headlights, too dim for that. Something filtered, controlled. Cole zoomed in. A truck, dark-colored, engine low. Lights off except for a narrow beam angled downward, just enough to see the ground without throwing light across the fence. Intentional. The truck rolled along the edge, tires hugging the outside line before cutting inward toward a gap where the terrain dipped just enough to allow access without touching the gate. Cole didn't move. He watched. The truck stopped. A few seconds passed. Then the driver's door opened. Tyler Whitaker stepped out. Clear enough now to see the outline, the posture, the way he moved like he wasn't worried about being seen. Cole let the footage play. Tyler walked around to the back, lowering the ramp of a flatbed trailer hitched to the truck. The metal clanked softly, the sound carrying just enough to register on the audio feed. He didn't rush, didn't hesitate. He walked straight to the shed, pulling the door open like he already knew it wouldn't resist him. Cole's jaw tightened slightly. Tyler climbed into the tractor cab. A moment passed. Then the engine turned. That sound, low, familiar, steady, filled the speakers for a few seconds before Tyler eased the machine forward. The tractor rolled out of the shed, headlights still off, guided only by the dim light of his phone set on the dashboard. The alignment wasn't perfect. The front wheel clipped the edge of the ramp, metal scraping against steel with a sharp, grinding noise. Cole paused the footage there, zoomed in. The fender, his father's fender, dragging just enough to strip paint down to bare metal. Damage. Not accidental. Careless. Cole resumed playback. Tyler corrected, backed slightly, then drove the tractor up onto the trailer. Slow. Confident. Like he'd already decided this was his to move. Once it was secured, he stepped down, walked around the back, and reached for the license plate. Cole leaned closer. Tyler unscrewed it. No hesitation. No second thought. He tossed it into the truck bed like it didn't matter. Then he climbed back into the cab, turned the truck around, and pulled away the same way he came. Quiet, controlled, leaving nothing behind but tire marks and the outline of absence. The footage ended. Cole sat back in the chair, the screen going still in front of him. There was no question anymore. No assumption. No interpretation. Just evidence. Clear, direct, unavoidable. He reached over and switched to another camera angle, this one closer to the fence line. Same timestamp, different perspective. The trailer backing in, the tractor loading, the exit path, everything lined up. Cole let it play through once more without touching anything. Every second mattered now. Every angle, every detail. Because this wasn't just about getting the tractor back. It was about making sure that when this moved forward, there was no room left for denial. He powered down the monitor and sat there for a moment, hands resting on the desk. Then he reached for a second device, a smaller unit, GPS tracker. He tapped the screen. Coordinates loaded instantly. The signal was active. Not far. Too close. Cole studied the map. The location pulsed just beyond the fence line, inside the subdivision, deeper than the HOA office, somewhere behind it, maintenance area, storage, hidden in plain sight. Cole exhaled slowly. They hadn't even tried to move it far. Didn't need to. Because in their minds, distance wasn't the protection. Authority was. He stood, slipping the tracker back into the case before closing it. Then he moved to the filing cabinet beside the desk, pulled open the top drawer. Inside, folders sat stacked in neat rows. Deeds, surveys, records that went back decades. His father's handwriting marked the tabs, dates, and notes, written with the kind of care that came from knowing one day someone else would need to understand them. Cole pulled out 3 folders, set them on the desk, opened them one by one. Original deed, property survey, boundary confirmation filed with the county long before the subdivision ever existed. He didn't read them in full. Didn't need to. He already knew what they said. What mattered now was having them ready, documented, accessible. He stacked them neatly, then reached for a notepad and wrote down a sequence. Timestamps, camera IDs, GPS coordinates, each one placed in order, clean, simple, something that could be handed over without explanation and still make sense. When he finished, he set the pen down and looked at the list. This was everything. Proof of entry, proof of removal, proof of possession. No gaps, no assumptions, just fact. Cole closed the folders and slid them into a single file, securing it under his arm. He stepped out of the office and back onto the porch, the afternoon light sharper now, cutting across the yard and the empty space beyond the shed. Nothing about the land had changed, but everything about what had happened on it had. He walked down the steps and headed toward the truck again. This time there was no pause. No hesitation, because the question wasn't what they'd done. That was already answered. The question now was what he was going to do next. Cole opened the driver's door and stopped just long enough to glance back toward the fence line, toward the subdivision, toward the place where they thought they were protected. Then he got in, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway. Because if they believed confidence was enough to take something that didn't belong to them, they were about to learn what evidence actually looked like, and why he hadn't stopped them when he had the chance. Cole didn't go back to the HOA. He didn't call Tyler. He didn't even look toward the subdivision as he drove past it this time, because the next move wasn't confrontation, it was separation. He pulled into the sheriff's office parking lot just before noon, engine cutting off with a quiet finality. The building itself was nothing special. Brick, practical, built to last. The kind of place where things were handled without noise. Inside, Sheriff Roy Bennett was already at his desk. Roy didn't look up right away. He finished reading the page in front of him, set it down, then leaned back in his chair, eyes settling on Cole like he'd been expecting him. "You look like you've already figured something out," Roy said. Cole stepped forward and set the file on the desk. "I did," he replied. Roy opened it without another word. The first thing he saw was the still frame, Tyler at the tractor. The second was the timestamp. The third was the sequence that followed. Roy didn't interrupt. He flipped through each page slowly, eyes narrowing just slightly as the timeline took shape. "Camera angles?" he asked. Multiple, Cole said. Tree line, east boundary, blind spots, all time synced. Roy nodded once, turning another page. GPS? Active. Tractor hasn't moved far. Roy glanced up at that. Location, HOA side. Maintenance area based on coordinates. Roy leaned back again, file still open in his hands. You didn't go get it, he said. No. You didn't call it in this morning? No. Roy studied him for a moment longer. Why? Cole didn't hesitate. Because it's my property, he said, and I'm a deputy. Roy's expression didn't change, but something in his posture did. Just a slight shift, like the answer mattered. Say that again, Roy said. Cole met his gaze. If I go out there in uniform and take it back myself, he said, it turns into something else. Abuse of authority, personal involvement. They'll bury the theft under that. Roy closed the file. And you don't want that. I won't give it to them. Silence settled between them for a second. Then Roy nodded. Good, he said. He stood, walking around the desk and picking up the file again. Because from this point on, Roy continued, you're not touching this case. Cole didn't react. I wasn't planning to. I know you weren't, Roy said, but I'm saying it anyway. He tapped the file once. This goes through proper channels. External deputies. Clean chain of custody. No one says later you influenced anything. Cole nodded once. That's the point. Roy studied him again, then let out a quiet breath. You've got enough here for a warrant, he said. Entry, removal, possession, intent. It's all there. Then do it right, Cole said. Roy gave a short nod. I will. He moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing, he added. You talked to them already? Cole thought about the office. Diane's smile, Tyler's grin. Yes. And? They didn't deny it. Roy huffed quietly. They never do, he said. Not when they think they're protected. Cole didn't respond. Roy opened the door and stepped out, already calling for one of the deputies on duty. Names were exchanged, instructions given. The kind of quiet coordination that didn't draw attention, but moved things forward all the same. Cole stayed where he was, not pacing, not watching, just standing, hands at his sides, letting the process take over. A few minutes later, Roy returned with two deputies Cole didn't work with directly, intentionally. Fresh eyes, no connection to the situation beyond what was in the file. Roy handed it over. You're taking lead, he told them. Evidence is clean. Victim is one of ours, which means we keep it cleaner. One of the deputies flipped through the pages, nodding as he went. Suspect? Tyler Whitaker, Roy said. HOA President's son. That got a brief glance exchanged between them. Figures, the second deputy muttered. Roy didn't comment. Warrant request goes in now, he continued. You'll have it signed within the hour if everything checks out. It will, the first deputy said. They left with the file. Roy turned back to Cole. That's as far as you go, he said. Cole nodded. I know. Roy studied him one more time. You're good with that? Cole didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the GPS unit, setting it on the desk between them. They think this is about control, he said. About who gets to decide what happens on that land. Roy glanced down at the blinking coordinates. And it's not. No, Cole said. It's about what can be proven. Roy gave a small nod. Then let's prove it. Cole picked up the GPS unit and slipped it back into his pocket. Outside, a patrol vehicle started up, engine low, steady. Another followed. Movement, not loud, not rushed, but deliberate. Cole stepped toward the door, pausing just before he pushed it open. Roy's voice stopped him. "They're going to push back," Roy said. "People like that always do. They'll try to flip it, make it about you." Cole didn't turn around. "I know," he said. "And?" Cole rested his hand on the door. "Then they'll have to do it without anything to stand on." He stepped outside, the sound of the patrol vehicles already fading down the road toward the subdivision, toward the place where the tractor sat, where Tyler thought it was safe, where Diane thought she still had control. Cole watched the dust settle behind the departing units, expression unchanged. Because now, for the first time since the tractor went missing, it wasn't his move anymore. And that was exactly where he needed it to be. Because once the law moved, it didn't stop halfway. The patrol vehicles rolled into the subdivision just after 2 in the afternoon, tires crunching slow over clean gravel roads that hadn't seen this kind of attention before. Lawns stayed trimmed, curtains shifted, doors cracked open just enough to watch without being seen. The HOA didn't like outside eyes, especially not ones carrying authority that didn't answer to them. The lead deputy stepped out first, warrant folder in hand, posture neutral but firm. The second followed, scanning the layout, mailboxes, sidewalks, the central office building where everything seemed to flow through. Diane Whitaker was already outside by the time they reached the door. She didn't rush to meet them. She positioned herself. Standing just off the walkway, arms folded, expression controlled, like she'd been preparing for this moment longer than anyone else had. "Officers," she said, voice smooth. "Is there a problem?" The lead deputy didn't slow down. "We're here regarding a reported theft," he said. "We need access to your maintenance building." Diane didn't move. "I'm not aware of any theft," she replied. "And that building is private association property. You can't just walk in." The deputy stopped a few feet in front of her. He held up the warrant. "Yes, we can." Diane glanced at the paper but didn't take it. "That doesn't apply here," she said. "This is an internal matter. We've already addressed it." "Ma'am," the deputy said, tone tightening just slightly. "This warrant is signed by a county judge. It applies wherever the listed property is located. That includes your building." Behind her, movement. Tyler stepped out from the side entrance, drink still in his hand, like nothing about this concerned him. He leaned against the railing, watching. Relaxed. Too relaxed. "This is ridiculous," Diane said. "You're responding to a complaint from someone who's been causing problems for this community for years. This is harassment." The deputy didn't react. "Last time," he said. "Access to the building." Diane held her ground. "No." That single word shifted everything, not because of how loud it was, but because of what it meant. The second deputy stepped forward, already reaching for his radio. "Dispatch," he said calmly. "Confirm warrant execution authority. Possible refusal on site." Diane's expression flickered, just for a second. Then it reset. "You're making a mistake," she said. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." The lad deputy didn't look away. "No, ma'am," he said. "We do." He turned slightly, signaling to the second deputy. "Proceed." 2 minutes later, a third vehicle pulled in. Then a fourth. Not an escalation. A procedure. Controlled. Documented. Inevitable. The maintenance building sat at the far end of the subdivision, behind a row of identical houses, partially shielded by a line of decorative trees. From the outside, it looked like storage. Tools, supplies, nothing worth attention. Until now. The deputies approached the door. Locked. The lad deputy held up the warrant again, reading out the authorization clearly, for the record, for the cameras, for anyone listening. Then he nodded. Go ahead. The second deputy stepped forward with a bolt cutter. The metal snapped clean. The lock dropped. Diane took a step forward. You can't just, ma'am, the deputy said, cutting her off. Step back. She stopped. Not because she wanted to, because she realized she couldn't stop it anymore. The door opened, slow at first, then wider. Dust shifted in the light. And there it was. Cole's tractor sat in the center of the building, not covered, not hidden well, just placed, like something temporarily out of sight. The scraped fender caught the light immediately. Bare metal exposed where the paint had been torn away during loading. Fresh damage. Unmistakable. The deputies didn't speak. They moved in. One circled the tractor, checking the serial number against the paperwork in hand. The other photographed everything. Angles, damage, positioning, the missing plate. Confirmed, the first deputy said. Matches registration. The second nodded, stepping toward a workbench along the wall. There, he added. The license plate sat off to the side, unattached, carelessly discarded. Next to it, a pair of gloves, a coil of rope, details, small but final. Behind them, Tyler shifted. For the first time, the confidence didn't hold. Okay, he said, stepping forward slightly. This is just a misunderstanding. We were moving it. Maintenance. Step back, the deputy said. Tyler stopped. The room had changed. Completely. No more control. No more narrative. Just facts. The lead deputy turned toward him. Tyler Whitaker? Tyler didn't answer right away. Then, yeah. Turn around. The words landed flat. Heavy. Tyler blinked. What? Turn around, the deputy repeated. Diane stepped forward. This is insane, she said. You don't have grounds for this, but we have evidence of unlawful removal of private property, the deputy said. We have possession. We have damage. That's enough. Tyler laughed once, short, uncertain. You're actually serious right now? The deputy didn't respond. He stepped forward, reached for Tyler's wrist. That's when it hit. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once. Tyler's expression changed. The smirk disappeared. The confidence collapsed. Because this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a process. Cold. Structured. Unstoppable. The cuffs clicked into place. Sharp. Final. Diane didn't move. Didn't speak. She stood there watching as the scene unfolded in front of her, piece by piece, like something she hadn't planned for, or worse, something she thought she'd never have to. The deputies continued working. Photos, notes, chain of custody, every step recorded, every detail locked in. Outside, more residents had gathered, watching, whispering. The same people who'd stood in that office earlier. The same people who'd believed confidence was enough to make something true. Now they were seeing something else. Proof. Real. Documented. Unavoidable. The tractor was loaded back onto a county trailer, secured carefully this time, without scraping, without damage. The way it should have been handled from the start. As it was pulled away, Diane finally spoke. This isn't over, she said. The lead deputy glanced at her. No, he replied. It's not. Tyler was guided toward the patrol car. Head down now. Silent. The same man who had laughed in the office hours earlier. Different posture. Different reality. As the door closed behind him, the weight of it settled over the entire subdivision. Control had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. And as the vehicles pulled away, carrying the evidence with them, one thing became clear. This hadn't ended anything. It had started something much bigger. It happens fast, faster than most people expect. By the time the patrol cars cleared the subdivision, the story had already started changing. Not the facts, the version of them. Cole saw it before the day was over. He was back on the ranch when his phone buzzed. Once, then again, then a third time. Not from Roy. Not from the deputies. From numbers he didn't recognize. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The first voicemail came in a minute later. A man's voice. Polite. Measured. Mr. Harper, this is Daniel Price, attorney representing the Whitaker family. I'd advise you to contact me immediately before this situation escalates further. Cole let the message finish. Deleted it. Then the second call came. Different number, same tone. This is regarding potential misuse of authority in connection with today's incident. We believe there may be grounds for a formal complaint. Delete. Cole set the phone down on the table and looked out the window toward the fence line. It had started. Not defense. Counterattack. They weren't arguing the theft. They were attacking the process. Exactly like he expected. Exactly why he hadn't touched the case himself. He stepped outside, walking toward the equipment shed as the sound of a truck approached from the road. The county trailer rolled in first, slow and steady, followed by a patrol unit behind it. The tractor sat secured on the flatbed, returned, but not untouched. The scrape along the fender stood out immediately, bright metal cutting through the original paint like a line that couldn't be erased. Cole didn't move closer right away. He let the vehicle come to a full stop, let the engine cut, let the deputies step out. Only then did he walk forward. Condition documented, the lead deputy said, nodding toward the damage. Photos, serial confirmation, full chain logged. Cole nodded once. Appreciate it. They unloaded it carefully this time. No rush, no noise, just controlled movement, the way it should have been done the first time. When the tractor touched the ground again, Cole stepped up to it, running his hand lightly over the edge of the fender. The metal was rough where it had been stripped. New damage. Permanent. Not something you could pretend didn't happen. Behind him, the deputy spoke again. Whitaker's been processed, he said. Charges filed. Unlawful removal, property damage. Additional charges pending depending on review. Cole didn't turn. And his mother? He asked. The deputy hesitated just slightly. Not at this stage. Cole nodded. Of course not. Diane Whitaker didn't act directly. She directed. That was the difference. And the problem. The patrol unit pulled out a few minutes later, leaving Cole alone again with the tractor, the shed, and the quiet that always came back after something broke it. He stood there for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back toward the house. Because this wasn't over. It was just shifting. By evening, the shift was complete. The subdivision didn't stay quiet. It never did. Word moved fast, faster than facts. By the time the sun dropped behind the ridge, the version circulating wasn't about theft. It was about Cole. He used his badge. He pushed it through. He's been waiting for this. Cole heard it secondhand at first. A neighbor from farther down the county road stopped by under the excuse of returning a tool he'd borrowed weeks ago. The conversation didn't last long. "They're saying you forced it," the man said, not quite meeting Cole's eyes. "That you had it lined up before anyone could say anything." Cole leaned against the porch rail. "I didn't." The man nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I figured." But he didn't sound certain. That was the problem. Doubt didn't need proof. It just needed space, and Diane knew exactly how to create it. The next morning, it got louder. A formal complaint was filed. Not with the county, with the department. Allegation: abuse of authority, conflict of interest, improper influence over an active investigation. Every word chosen carefully. Every angle designed to do one thing: discredit. Roy called before noon. "You've seen it?" he asked. "Yeah. You're off duty until this clears," Roy said. "Procedure." Cole didn't argue. Understood. "Internal reviews already started," Roy added. "External investigators. Full audit. Dispatch logs, timelines, everything." "Good." There was a pause. "They're pushing hard," Roy said. "I know. You still good with how you handled it?" Cole looked out toward the field, the tractor now sitting back where it belonged. "Yes." Roy let out a breath, then let it run. Cole ended the call and set the phone down again. Off duty. Under review. Exactly the position Diane wanted him in. Not because it proved anything, but because it created doubt. And doubt was enough to slow things down. Enough to shift attention away from what had actually happened. Cole stepped off the porch and walked back toward the tractor, stopping a few feet short. The scrape along the fender caught the light again. Evidence. Still there. Still real. No matter what anyone said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the GPS unit, checking the last recorded movement. Time-stamped. Logged. Unchanged. The same data now sitting in the case file. The same data that didn't care about opinions. Cole slipped it back into his pocket. Because that was the difference. Diane controlled perception, but he controlled something else. The timeline. And timelines didn't lie, as long as you didn't interfere with them. He turned back toward the house, the weight of the situation settling into something steady again. Not anger, not frustration, focus. Because the fight had changed, not about getting the tractor back. That part was done. Now it was about something else entirely. Proving that every step he took had been clean. Untouchable, and that the people trying to rewrite the story didn't have anything solid to stand on. Behind the fence, the subdivision looked the same as it always had. Neat, controlled, certain. But something inside it had shifted, because for the first time, someone had pushed back, and done it in a way they couldn't control. She didn't wait long to answer that. By the third day, it wasn't whispers anymore. It was statements. Printed notices appeared on the HOA bulletin board, copies sliding into mailboxes across the subdivision. Formal language, clean formatting, stamped with the same authority Diane had always used to control everything else. Concern regarding misuse of law enforcement influence. Request for community review. Protection of resident rights. Cole didn't need to read all of it to understand what she was doing. She wasn't defending her son. She was reframing the entire situation, turning a theft into a question of power, and placing him at the center of it. By the end of the week, it worked. Not completely, but enough. Cole saw it in the way people looked at him when he drove past the edge of the subdivision. Some didn't look at all. Others watched longer than they used to, like they were trying to decide something they hadn't needed to question before. He stopped at the local supply store that Friday. Routine, nothing unusual. Pick up parts, fuel, a few things for the fence line. Inside, the air felt different. Not hostile, but quieter. The kind of quiet that comes when a room knows something you don't, or thinks it does. A man near the counter nodded once as Cole walked in. "Afternoon," he said. Cole nodded back. "Afternoon." The man hesitated, then added, "Heard things got complicated over there." Cole didn't stop moving. "Not really," he said. The man didn't press, but he didn't agree either. That was the shift. Not confrontation. Distance. Cole paid, took his receipt, and walked out without another word. Back at the ranch, the calls kept coming. Different numbers, same message, representation, advisement, potential liability. He didn't answer any of them, because none of it changed what actually happened, but it did change how long it would take to prove it. That was Diane's strategy: delay, confuse, divide, and for a few days it worked. The department review moved forward. External investigators arrived. Quiet, professional, thorough. They didn't ask opinions, they asked for records, dispatch logs, call times, chain of command. Every step taken from the moment Cole walked into the sheriff's office to the moment Tyler was taken into custody. Cole handed over everything without hesitation. Timeline, camera footage, GPS logs, the same file Roy had seen, the same file the warrant had been built on. Nothing added, nothing removed. Because anything extra, anything unnecessary, would give them something to question. That was the risk. Not being wrong, but giving the appearance of it. The investigators worked without comment, but Cole could see it in the way they moved through the evidence. No gaps, no shortcuts, no overlap between him and the execution of the case. Exactly the way it needed to be. Still, outside the investigation, the narrative kept shifting. Diane didn't argue facts. She didn't have to. She spoke to the community, held small gatherings, talked about protection, about abuse, about what happens when authority goes unchecked. She never said Cole's name directly. Didn't need to. Everyone knew who she meant. And for people who hadn't seen the footage, hadn't read the reports, her version sounded just as real as the truth. That was the problem with perception. It didn't require proof. Only repetition. One evening, as the sun dropped low across the field, a truck pulled up at the edge of Cole's property. He saw it from the porch. Didn't move right away. Just watched. The driver stepped out slowly. Lisa Grant. Cole recognized her. Lived 2 houses down from the HOA office. Quiet. Kept to herself. The kind of person who didn't get involved. Until now. She walked up to the fence, stopping a few feet short like she wasn't sure she should be there. Cole stepped down from the porch and walked toward her. "Evening," he said. Lisa nodded, hands tucked into her jacket pockets. "Evening." She glanced back toward the subdivision, then back at him. "They're saying a lot of things," she said. "I've heard." She hesitated. "I saw something," she added. That shifted the air. Cole didn't step closer. Didn't interrupt. Just waited. "Night it happened," she said. "I couldn't sleep. Heard something outside. Looked out my window." She paused, like she was deciding how much to say. "There was a truck," she continued. "Flatbed. No headlights. It came down the side road. Slow, like it didn't want to be noticed." Cole's attention sharpened. "Time?" he asked. "Late," she said. "After 11. Maybe closer to midnight." Cole nodded once. "Driver?" Lisa looked at him directly now. It was Tyler. No hesitation. No doubt. He backed toward your fence line, she said. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Figured it was HOA work. But after what happened, she let the sentence hang. Cole understood. You willing to say that officially? He asked. Lisa looked back toward the houses again, then at him. They've done things before, she said quietly. Not like this. Smaller. Tools, equipment, stuff that just disappeared. That was new. Anyone report it? Cole asked. Lisa shook her head. No one wanted to deal with it, she said. Easier to let it go than fight them. Cole held her gaze. Not this time. Lisa nodded. No, she said. Not this time. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. I wrote down the time, she said. Didn't know why. Just felt off. She handed it to him. A note. Time stamped. Exact. Within minutes of the footage he already had. Another piece, not just evidence, corroboration. Cole handed the phone back. Sheriff's office will want that, he said. I'll call them, she replied. She didn't stay long after that. Didn't linger. Just turned and walked back toward her truck, leaving the space between the ranch and the subdivision feeling different than it had before. Less one-sided. Cole watched her go, then turned back toward the house. Because that was the first crack. Not in the evidence, in the control. Diane could shape a narrative, but she couldn't stop the truth from surfacing once people decided to speak. And now, someone had. Cole stepped onto the porch again, looking out over the field, the tractor sitting back where it belonged, silent but present. The investigation was still moving. The accusations were still out there. But something had shifted. Not enough to end it. Not yet. But enough to change where it was heading. Because now it wasn't just his word, or his evidence. It was starting to become something bigger. A pattern. And patterns, once seen, were a lot harder to ignore. It started small. One call, then another. By the next morning, the sheriff's office wasn't just handling a theft case anymore. It was fielding statements, not rumors, not complaints. Statements. Lisa Grant's testimony was the first to go on record. Time, location, visual confirmation. Clean, consistent, matching the footage Cole had already provided down to the minute. That alone strengthened the case. But it didn't stop there. Because once one person spoke, others followed. A man from the far end of the subdivision reported a missing riding mower from earlier that summer. Said it had turned up 2 weeks later behind the same maintenance building. No explanation, no record of who moved it. Another resident mentioned tools disappearing during a dispute over landscaping compliance. A third described a piece of equipment taken after refusing to pay a fine. Each story alone wasn't enough. Together, they formed a pattern, and patterns changed how cases were handled. Roy called Cole mid-morning. You were right to stay out of it, he said without introduction. Cole stood at the edge of the shed, looking out toward the fence. What's coming in? He asked. More than I expected, Roy replied. Not all of it clean, but enough to start connecting dots. We're expanding scope. Cole didn't respond immediately. Financials? He asked. Looking into it, Roy said. Too early to say. That meant something. Because Roy didn't say things like that unless he already had reason. Cole ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The case was shifting. Again. Not just theft. Not just retaliation. Something broader. Something Diane hadn't planned for. But what broke it open wasn't a witness. It was a mistake. 2 days later, Roy called again. This time, his tone was different. Get to the office, he said. Cole didn't ask why. He drove straight there. Inside, the atmosphere had changed. Not louder, not chaotic. Just focused in a way that meant something important had landed. Roy stood in the back office with two investigators, a laptop open on the desk between them. When Cole stepped in, Roy looked up. "We found something," he said. Cole stopped just inside the doorway. "What kind of something?" Roy turned the screen slightly. "Audio," he said. Cole stepped closer. The file was already queued. Timestamp from the night before the theft. Source: a security camera mounted near the HOA office. Not one of Cole's, one of theirs. Roy hit play. At first it was just ambient sound. Footsteps, a door closing, faint movement in the background. Then, voices. Diane Whitaker. Clear. Controlled. "I'm telling you, just go get it." Cole didn't move. On the recording, Tyler's voice came next. "What if he says something?" Diane didn't hesitate. "Then he says something," she replied. "It doesn't change anything." A pause. Then Tyler again. "And if it turns into a problem?" Another pause. Short. Measured. "It won't," Diane said. "That's what the association is for." Silence. Then the sound of movement. A chair shifting. Footsteps. And one final line. "You worry too much. Just take it, and we'll deal with it after." The recording ended. No static. No distortion. Nothing unclear. Just fact. Cole exhaled slowly. "That's admissible?" he asked. One of the investigators nodded. "Cameras HOA owned," he said. "Recorded on their system. Pulled under warrant tied to the property search. Chains clean." Roy leaned back against the desk. "She handed it to us," he said. "Didn't even know it existed." Cole looked at the screen again. Then at Roy. "That changes everything." Roy nodded once. "Yeah," he said. "It does. Because now, it wasn't just Tyler. It wasn't just action. It was intent, instruction, direction, the difference between a bad decision and a coordinated one." Cole stepped back slightly, the weight of it settling in. "Where does it go?" he asked. "Up," Roy said. "Charges expand. Conspiracy angle possibly more depending on what else comes in." "And the complaint against me?" Roy's expression didn't shift. "Still under review," he said. "But this..." He gestured toward the laptop. "This doesn't help their side." No. It didn't. Because Diane's entire strategy depended on one thing: control of the narrative. And now she didn't have it. The investigators resumed working, logging the file, marking timestamps, cross-referencing it against existing evidence. Everything lined up. Clean. Exact. Impossible to argue. Cole stood there for another moment, then turned toward the door. Roy stopped him. "We're not releasing it yet," he said. Cole paused. "Why not?" "Because once it's out," Roy replied, "it changes everything outside this office. We make sure the case is locked first." Cole nodded. That made sense. Because timing mattered, almost as much as evidence. He stepped outside into the afternoon light, the weight of the recording still sitting steady in his mind. Diane had built everything on control, on the belief that no one would ever look closely enough, that no one would ever connect the pieces. But she had said it herself. Calm, clear, unprotected. And now it wasn't just a story anymore. It was proof. Cole walked to his truck, pausing with his hand on the door. Because for the first time since the tractor went missing, He wasn't reacting. He wasn't defending. He was waiting. Waiting for the moment when everything they had, all the pressure, all the manipulation, all the control, collapsed under its own weight. And as he got in and started the engine, one thought stayed with him. Not about what had happened, but about what was coming next, farther than anyone in that subdivision was ready for. The recording didn't stay quiet for long. Once the case file locked, once every timestamp, every witness, every piece of physical evidence was verified, the sheriff's office released the audio as part of the formal proceedings. They didn't need to explain it. They just played it. Diane's voice carried clean through the room during the first public hearing. Calm, direct, unapologetic, just go get it. That's what the association is for. No raised tone, no hesitation, just certainty. The kind that couldn't be argued once people actually heard it for themselves. The room went still. Not the quiet of confusion, the quiet of realization. Because for the first time, the version Diane had been selling, about protection, about rules, about control, collapsed in a single moment. Cole sat near the back, not in uniform, not at the front, not presenting anything, just present. Because this wasn't his moment to speak. It was the moment for the truth to stand on its own. One by one, the rest followed. Lisa Grant's testimony locked the timeline. The camera footage confirmed the act. The GPS logs confirmed possession. And then, the pattern. Other residents came forward. Not all at once, but enough. A mower taken and returned without explanation. Tools moved during disputes. Equipment that disappeared just long enough to make a point. Each case small on its own. Together, a system. Not written anywhere, but enforced just the same. The investigation expanded beyond the original charge. Financial records were pulled. Vendor contracts reviewed. Payments traced. And what they found wasn't complicated. It was careless. Money collected through fines that never made it into official accounts. Contracts issued to companies that didn't exist beyond a name and a bank number. Amounts inflated, redirected, unaccounted for. Diane hadn't just controlled the neighborhood, she had used it. And now, there was a record. At the next hearing, the tone had changed. No more statements about misunderstanding. No more arguments about authority. Just defense. Limited. Fragmented. Late. Her attorney stood, spoke in measured terms, tried to separate the theft from the broader accusations. But the connection was already there. Documented. Verified. Impossible to isolate. Tyler didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The charges spoke for him. Unlawful removal, property damage, evidence tampering. He took a plea before the trial date was even set. There wasn't anything left to argue. Diane lasted longer. She fought the financial charges, denied intent, challenged procedure. But every attempt ran into the same problem. Records, not opinions, not statements, numbers, dates, signatures. The kind of evidence that didn't shift under pressure. By the time sentencing came, the outcome wasn't a surprise. Restitution, removal, charges tied not just to the tractor, but to years of control built without oversight. The HOA board dissolved shortly after. New elections scheduled under county supervision. Different people, different structure, rules rewritten. This time, documented, transparent, limited, the way they should have been from the start. Out at the ranch, nothing changed. Not the fence, not the land, not the routine. Cole repaired the shed door the same way his father would have. No shortcuts, no rush. The tractor sat back in its place, the scrape still visible along the fender. He didn't repaint it, didn't try to hide it, because it wasn't damage to forget. It was proof of what had happened, and what didn't happen again. A few weeks later, a truck pulled up at the gate. Different this time. No hesitation. Lisa Grant stepped out first. Behind her, two others from the subdivision. They didn't come with complaints. They came with tools. "We figured we'd fix the fence line," Lisa said, nodding toward the section near the boundary where the trailer had cut through. Cole looked at them for a second, then nodded. "All right." They worked without much talk. No arguments, no tension, just quiet effort. By midday, the fence stood straight again, stronger than before, not because of the materials, because of who was standing on both sides of it. Later that evening, Sheriff Roy Bennett stopped by, leaned against the porch rail the same way he always did. "You handled it right," he said. Cole didn't respond immediately. "Had to," he said after a moment. Roy nodded. "Most wouldn't have stepped back," he added. "Would have gone straight at it." Cole looked out toward the field. "Then they would have lost it," he said. Roy didn't argue, because they both knew. That was the difference. Not force, not volume, timing, control, letting the facts move first. The next morning, Cole started the tractor before sunrise. The engine turned clean, steady, the same sound it had always made. He drove it out across the field, cutting a straight line through the soil, the work continuing exactly where it had left off. Along the fence, a few neighbors stood watching. Not all, but enough. Some raised a hand. Some nodded. No one spoke. They didn't need to, because the story had already settled. Not the version Diane tried to control, the one built on proof. And as the tractor moved across the land, one thing stayed clear. The property hadn't changed. The ownership hadn't changed. The truth hadn't changed. Only the power had. And it hadn't moved the land at all. It had moved the people who thought they could control it.